Mr. Richardson, thank you so much for joining us today. We are students from James Workman Middle School. We're 6th graders, and we have my class here, Mrs. Pack's class, and in this other room we have Mrs. Zimmerman's class and Ms. Baldwin's class, and we are just so glad you could join us today. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely glad to join in.
So this week we are experiencing Hour of Code, which is where we're learning computer coding through code.org and some other activities so that we can kind of get a taste for computer coding and how that kind of fits in with different jobs. And so we were hoping you could first maybe share a little bit about your job and the role that coding plays for you.
Sure. Okay. Just to introduce myself again, my name's Chase, and hey. I work mostly on building legal and banking software. So I'm a programmer. I started building websites about 6 years ago. Started designing websites, and now I am working on a full-featured application, a little bit more complicated than in the past. So anyways, I'm here to answer questions for you guys and give you a little bit of direction into getting into programming. What I shared with the other class before is that there's kind of two main routes that you can take when you come into programming. There are, within web application development or building websites, you have front-end developers and back-end developers. I'm a front-end developer, which means that I deal with kind of the artsy-fartsy stuff. I deal with the touch and feel of an application. When you go to view something on your iPad and you touch buttons or you fill out a form or you play a game, how do you interact with it? That's the type of stuff that I program for. Sometimes I design graphics for applications like that. Then the other route that I mentioned is back-end development, and that has to deal with managing data and architecting databases and all kinds of data management in software architecture. So with that, let's get started with some questions, guys.
Great, thank you. Our first question is from Jacob.
Does coding get easier the more you do it, or does it remain challenging?
Does coding get easier as I do it, or does it remain challenging? Is that the question?
Yes.
All right. Both of those are true. Definitely, you know, as you get into programming and you learn, things are going to get easier. You're going to build up a confidence to be able to tackle problems, to solve challenges that are thrown your way. So as you get into programming, you're going to code faster. You're going to realize how to architect or build your software more efficiently as time goes on. You'll enjoy being able to get things done faster, but in the world of programming, there's all kinds of challenges that are always going to be springing up. You always want to be learning. You always want to be challenged. So to answer your question directly, both. Yes, it gets easier, but you find new problems to learn how to solve.
Thank you.
And now we'll go to Ms. Zimmerman's room to Samantha from Ms. Baldwin's class.
What role does coding play in the future?
Have you ever seen the movie Terminator?
Yeah.
No, I'm kidding. There's all kinds of roles that coding plays now. We'll start with now. So the fact that you guys all have computers in your class and that you're used to using computers, playing games, that it helps organize the learning that you do every day is something that wasn't around 10 years ago. So the way that programming is changing our everyday lives is kind of exciting. As far as the future, you guys are all going to be using computers, and the next generation of people is going to be even more plugged in than you guys are. So programming changes the way that we learn, it changes the way that we organize, it changes the way that we work, the way that we create, and the way that we reach out to people all over the world.
Thank you. Also in Miss Zimmerman's room is Devin.
It's Lily.
Oh, so sorry, Lily.
Devin went home.
What are some things you have coded during your life?
Okay, well, most of the things that I've worked on have either been websites for companies and designing websites for them so that they can publicize themselves to the public so that they can be found on search engines like Google so that they can advertise. And then in the past couple of years, I've worked more on applications that have to do with making payments to utility companies like the water company. So your parents, for example, have a water bill every month and they have to pay that. So I've worked on software to help people pay their bill, or manage bank accounts, or manage legal documents, or construction jobs, the management of that. So mostly money and management applications is what I've worked on with programming.
Thank you.
And from my class, Chrislyn has a question.
What are some challenges you face when designing code?
Challenges. Let's see. A couple challenges. First of all, I always want my code to be better. I always want to improve as a programmer. I always want to write my code so that when other people jump in and they have to touch my code after I do, that they can understand it so that they can enjoy it. Other challenges that I hit are if other programmers have left bugs in my software, or if I've left a bug in my software and I've got to go fix it, then sometimes that can be a real challenge, a real frustration to figure out the bug. But when I do figure it out, it's very rewarding. And then after that, a challenge or pursuit that I have is always learning to organize my code better, to architect it and structure it properly so that it works the best for the future. And that's that.
Thank you. And another question from Clarissa.
Why would you recommend coding as a career path?
Okay, programming as a career path. I found it's great because, first of all, it pays well. It offers a good salary to you. If you put in the effort that it takes to learn to program, you're going to have a career. You're going to have career opportunities that others won't have. So, for example, I'm in a home office right now, so I'm working remotely. I have a job that's in a completely different city from where I live, and I work from home. I work from coffee shops like Starbucks. I have the opportunity to travel a little bit more or work for companies that don't even exist where I live. So that's great, and it's also very rewarding. I get to create every day. So that's why I would recommend getting into programming as a career, because it gives you a lot more rewarding opportunities that some other careers might not give you as much.
Thank you.
And now we'll go to Ms. Zimmerman's room for a question from Wyatt.
Do people learn coding in places like Africa, Guatemala, and Haiti?
You know, I do know of some less fortunate countries than we live in where there are programmers. I actually work with programmers, or have to work with programmers from India, from Poland, and other European countries. So some of those less privileged countries that are away from us, they don't have quite the opportunity that we have, but there are a lot of people pursuing programming careers, and they're great to work with.
Thank you. And we have another question from Samantha.
What is the average salary of a coding expert? Do you find there are many jobs available?
So two questions there. First of all is how much money do you make? I'm not going to be able to give specific details on how much money I make or the people around me, but let me just say that a career in programming is one of the higher paying jobs that exist today. that's reachable or attainable, you can pursue a programming career and make a lot more money in it than some other career opportunities. It's very often that you see people making six-figure incomes. And then also, is it easy to find a job? There's a very high demand for programmers and developers. I've seen some of my friends looking for programming jobs. They always find a job within a couple of weeks that they're excited about. I have recruiters contact me for job opportunities in other places in the country regularly. So it's nice to have those options and opportunities available.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
And now to Ms. Zimmerman's room for a question from Melanie.
Did you train yourself, or did you go to school to become a coding expert?
That's a good question. So I personally did not go to school for programming. I did take a couple of programming classes at a community college, but the majority of what I've learned for programming and what I use every day, I actually did teach myself the majority of that through online resources, by taking classes online, not associated with a university or a college, by Googling all kinds of stuff whenever I have problems. I've had some friends that I work with that have also helped me as well. I've read books about programming, so the most important thing for you in learning to program is that you show initiative and you take on the responsibility of learning for yourself. You challenge yourself, you have a passion and a drive to learn. That way you'll succeed. If you go to school, then that can also be really, really helpful. I have some coworkers that have degrees in programming, and it has helped them quite a bit. It's been very good for them. So the way that the programming industry is, you can go to school, you can not go to school, but you have to have the drive to learn, and both routes can work out well for you.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
And now another question from Ms. Zimmerman's room from Angelina.
What softwares do you use for coding?
Let's see, what softwares do I use for coding? Well, first I'm going to start off with which programming languages I use. I program in HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and I work within an application that's built in C#, and sometimes I work in PHP applications. So when you work in an application that is in C#, you usually use a program called Visual Studio, and that is made by Microsoft, and that is now free, part of the open source community. That just happened in the last couple of months, which is exciting for a lot of developers. And then if you work in PHP applications or Python applications, and there's some other languages, then there are a bunch of free tools out there as well that you can use for those applications. So what I would recommend for you guys is, if you want to get into building websites, I would start off with a free website blog tool called WordPress. You may have heard of WordPress, and your teacher can point you to that after this is done. But that's a way for you to start your own website. You can start building pages, you can start putting pictures up, customizing your web page. And then when you're ready, you can start jumping into the code and PHP behind that and start editing. You can kind of grow that way.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
And a question from Ethan.
What education do you need to get into a job of coding, and how many years did you train?
Well, see, that kind of plays off of what we were just talking about. It is very smart to go in to get a degree for computer science. When you go to college or university for computer science or software architecture, you learn a lot of concepts that help you design and architect your applications. It's fantastic. You don't have to go that route. You can also learn yourself online. you know, within a couple years, you can get to the point where you can really start moving around, start programming a lot. You guys are young. If you start learning now, start concreting some of those programming concepts in your mind, you'll really have a jump start. You'll be ahead of the curve. But you know, I was telling the other class that it usually takes about 5 to 10 years before you become a master at something, before you become really good. So I would encourage you guys to get started now.
And a question from Jasmine in Miss Zimmerman's room.
What part about coding made you interested?
Let's see. I'm a very spatial thinker, so I like to, well, I'm moving my hands around a lot now, right? But I like to place things here, then here, and then here, and then here, and see how they fit together like puzzle pieces. So I started building web pages, designing web pages, putting them together. I was always intrigued by a layout, by designing pages. And then I was really intrigued by HTML, which is less about programming actions, but more about building, right? So HTML is almost like playing with Legos or Connects. And then JavaScript is what brings it to life. And so I find it fun, I find it intriguing, also challenging, and when you step up to the challenge and learn something that's hard like that, there's a lot of reward that comes from that. You feel like you've accomplished something.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And our very last question for today is from Kayla.
Do you think coding should be taught in schools?
I definitely do think coding should be taught in schools. Now, I started coding when I was about 19 or 20 years old. I have some friends that started programming when they were around 14 years old, and it really set them apart. It gave them a jump start. It put them ahead of the rest of the people that I know in programming. They were able to start doing more sooner and accomplish a lot more. So I'm happy for you guys because you guys seem to be getting an introduction to coding. It's going to help you guys form critical thinking skills. It's going to help you with all of the rest of your studies. The problem solving and critical thinking that you learn in programming will help you with math, science, English, and it'll also give you the opportunity to jump into a career that's very rewarding. It pays well, and it opens up all kinds of opportunities for you.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Richardson, for taking time out of your day to talk to the afternoon group as well. I know that they have learned lots of great things from you today, and we just really appreciate your time. So we will go ahead and say goodbye. So my class, wave goodbye. And Mrs. Zimmerman's class.
Bye.
And that's Miss Baldwin's class too. So thank you again for spending time with us, and we hope you have a good rest of your day at work.
Okay, have a fun one. Bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.